Life has a way of throwing surprises at you, and they aren't always pleasant. She smoothed her hand over the snow-white blouse, fixing the sharp, pointed collar. The uniform was new. They had given it to her last week after the previous one had completely worn out. Nyala took care of things, knowing she'd have to wait at least 6 months for the next replacement. In her life, every detail mattered. Every penny counted. "Vance, the tray is ready," shouted Ms. Hattie, the shift supervisor, from the hallway. "The guests are already arriving. Move it." Nyala picked up the heavy tray loaded with crystal champagne flutes and headed for the main staircase. Today, the Galaxy Grand Hotel restaurant was hosting a private banquet for millionaires. An investment forum was concluding with a lavish reception. Black limousines pulled up one after another at the entrance. Security guards in dark suits scanned invitations. Women in famous designer gowns laughed loudly and ostentatiously. Men in expensive suits discussed million-dollar deals, gesturing casually with cigars. This world sparkled and shimmered, but Nyala knew she was just a shadow here, invisible and unnecessary. Nyala knew this world only from the service side. She walked with her back straight, trying to be unnoticeable. The tray was heavy, and her hands trembled slightly. She hadn't eaten much today. She had given her last few dollars for her mother's medication. Her stomach ached unpleasantly from hunger, but she had learned to ignore it. The main thing was not to drop the tray, not to make a mistake. Mistakes here were not forgiven. In the main hall, about 100 guests had already gathered. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the marble floor, reflecting the silhouettes of elegantly dressed people. The orchestra was softly playing something classical. It sounded like Mozart, but Nyala wasn't sure. The air was filled with the aroma of expensive perfumes and the self-confidence of important guests, as well as the scent of old money and limitless possibilities. Along the walls stood tables covered with white tablecloths and adorned with bouquets of roses. On every table sat silver cutlery, crystal glasses, and candles in elegant candelabras. Everything here breathed a luxury inaccessible to regular folks like Nyala. She moved along the wall, offering champagne to the passing guests. Some took a glass with a nod of thanks, others didn't even look in her direction, and some waved her away like an annoying fly. Nyala was used to this attitude. To these people, she was part of the furniture, nothing more. "Miss, over here!" A man of about 50 with a flushed face waved his hand. He wore an expensive pinstripe suit, and on his wrist, a solid gold watch gleamed under the lamplight. Nyala approached and extended the tray. The man took a glass without even looking at her, turned back to his conversation partner, and continued talking, waving his arms and laughing loudly at some joke. Nyala tried to move away, taking a step back, but at that moment, his elbow struck her hard on the shoulder. The blow was strong and unexpected. She felt the tray tip. The world seemed to go into slow motion. Nyala tried to maintain her balance, tensing her arms, but it was too late. The tray slipped from her fingers. The crystal glasses filled with champagne flew downward, describing an arc in the air, and shattered against the marble floor with a deafening crash. Shards flew in all directions. Champagne splashed like a fountain, landing directly on the dress of a woman standing 2 steps away. Time stopped. The woman screamed and jumped back, raising her hands in a protective gesture. Her dress, luxurious, iridescent with emerald tones, clearly exclusive and custom-made, was soaked in champagne from the neckline to the hem. Shards of glass glittered on the expensive fabric, leaving wet spots. The entire hall froze. Conversation ceased instantly. The orchestra stopped playing mid-note. 100 pairs of eyes fixed on Nyala. The silence was so deep you could hear the sound of drops falling from the dress to the marble floor. "What have you done?" The woman looked at Nyala with horror and anger. Her voice trembled. A man approached her instantly, tall, broad-shouldered, in an impeccable dark gray suit that fit his athletic figure perfectly. His face was hard, cheekbones sharp, and his gaze cold as ice. Dark hair with gray at the temples was slicked back. Sterling Thorne. Nyala had seen his photos in the business magazines that hotel guests sometimes left behind. He was one of the city's biggest investors, a man whose opinion was listened to even in D.C. They said he was ruthless in business and tolerated no mistakes. Now Nyala was convinced the rumors didn't lie. He grabbed her by the elbow so hard she could barely stay on her feet. His fingers dug into her arm, causing sharp pain. Nyala cried out involuntarily, but the sound got stuck in her throat. "Do you have any idea how much this dress costs? You broke nobody?" His voice was low, but every word cut like a razor. He spoke quietly, but in that silence, everyone heard him. "Starting tomorrow, you won't even get hired to flip burgers anywhere in this city. Understand? I will personally see to it." Nyala raised her eyes. There were about 100 people in the room, and they were all looking at her. Some with pity, others with mocking smiles, some with frank malice. But no one intervened. No one defended her. Even the man who had pushed her stood to the side staring at his glass, pretending nothing had happened. He didn't care. He was protected by his wealth and position. "I'm sorry," Nyala whispered. I was pushed." "Shut up," Sterling roared, squeezing her elbow even harder. "You're going to make excuses on top of it?" His wife, Amara Thorne, stood nearby examining the ruined dress. She was a beautiful woman of 35, with fine features and long dark hair. Now her face expressed a mixture of shock and disgust. "Sterling, let her go," Amara said quietly. "Just let her clean this up." Sterling looked at his wife, then back at Nyala. He shoved her aside with such force she almost fell. "Get out of my sight," he said through gritted teeth. Nyala dropped to her knees and began picking up the shards onto the tray. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't allow herself to shed a single tear. She had learned long ago to keep her emotions inside. Tears were a luxury she couldn't afford. She picked up the sharp fragments, feeling one of them slice her finger. A drop of blood fell to the floor, but Nyala kept working, ignoring the pain. A security guard approached her and silently handed her a dustpan and broom. Nyala nodded in thanks and continued collecting the glass. Her knees ached from the hard marble floor, her back hurt from the awkward posture, but she methodically continued cleaning up the consequences of the incident. Conversations in the hall gradually resumed. The orchestra started playing again, this time something cheerful and light. The incident was forgotten in 5 minutes. For the guests, it was just a minor inconvenience, a fleeting episode of a luxurious evening they wouldn't even remember tomorrow. But for Nyala, it was another blow, another humiliation, another reminder of how low she had fallen and how ruthless this world can be to those who stumble. 3 months ago, she was working as a nurse in the ER of County General. She loved her work, helped people, felt necessary. She had a team she cared about, the respect of patients, and a stable salary. She was about to enroll in advanced courses. She wanted to become a head nurse. She had plans, hopes for the future. And then he appeared, Dr. Lucius Graves, the chief of medicine at the clinic. And everything collapsed in an instant. Nyala picked up the last shard, stood up, and left the hall through the service door. It was quiet and cool in the corridor. She leaned against the wall, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. "It's nothing," she whispered to herself. "It's nothing. You can handle this." She couldn't lose this job. She couldn't. At home, she had a sick mother and a younger sister, Zadie, who was only 10. Mom needed expensive medication. Zadie needed school supplies, food, clothes. Nyala was the only one who could support the family. "Vance," Ms. Hattie called out, "what are you doing standing there? Go to the kitchen for a new tray. Hurry up." Nyala straightened up and went to the kitchen. The work continued. The evening dragged on endlessly. Nyala served drinks, collected dirty plates, smiled when it was necessary to smile, and stayed silent when it was necessary to stay silent. She tried to stay away from Sterling Thorne and his wife, but several times she caught their glances. Amara had already changed in the ladies' lounge into a new silver-blue dress that her driver had quickly brought over. She watched Nyala with curiosity, as if trying to understand something, and Sterling watched her with cold contempt. At 10 o'clock at night, most of the guests moved to the small lounge where the dessert table was served. Nyala was standing by the wall with a tray, waiting for someone to ask for more champagne or water. Suddenly, a noise was heard in the adjoining room. First quiet, then louder and louder. Someone screamed. Nyala left the tray on the nearest table and ran toward the sound. In the grand hall, where some of the guests still remained, stood Amara Thorne. She was clutching her throat with both hands. Her face turned red, then began to acquire a bluish tint. Her breathing became jagged and hoarse with whistling sounds. Her eyes widened with fear, animal, primitive fear of death. Her chest heaved convulsively, but no air was getting through. Bronchospasm. Nyala recognized the symptoms instantly. She had seen this dozens of times in the ER. Sterling ran to his wife, grabbing her by the shoulders. His face, usually so confident and authoritative, was twisted with panic. "Amara, where is your inhaler? I can't find it." He shook her as if that could help. She couldn't answer. She only gasped, trying to inhale air. Her hands clenched and unclenched convulsively, scratching at her own neck in an attempt to help herself breathe. Her legs buckled. The guests surrounded them in a tight circle. Someone was recording with a phone. In our world, even someone else's death becomes content for social media. Some looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Some simply stood with frozen faces, afraid to intervene and take responsibility. Indifference masked as decency. "Call an ambulance!" Sterling shouted, but his voice trembled with panic. Amara tried to say something, but could only emit a hoarse whisper. Inhaler. Purse. Nyala pushed her way through the crowd. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady and her mind clear. She had seen hundreds of similar attacks during her work at the hospital. It was bronchial asthma, and minutes counted. "Give me her purse, now!" she shouted loudly and with authority. Sterling turned, recognized her, and froze for a moment. But there was no time to think. One of the guests held out a small evening clutch. Nyala grabbed it, opened it, and dumped the contents onto the nearest table. Lipstick, powder, phone, keys. But there was no inhaler. "It's not here," she exhaled. Amara was choking more and more. Her face began to turn blue. She slumped to the floor. Sterling barely held her up. Nyala straightened up and shouted at the top of her lungs, drowning out the murmur of the crowd. "Does anyone have an asthma inhaler? Anyone? Urgent!" A few seconds of silence. Then from the back of the room, a woman of about 40 came running with trembling hands. "I do! I have one!" She reached into her bag and pulled out an inhaler. Nyala took it and knelt beside Amara. Her hands moved with confidence and speed, just as she had done dozens of times in the ER. She shook the inhaler and brought it to Amara's lips. "Deep breath," she said calmly and clearly. "Now, with me, 1. Amara tried to inhale. Nyala pressed the valve. "Again, slowly. Hold your breath." A few seconds passed that seemed like an eternity. Then Amara breathed a little more evenly. Another puff. One more. Color began to return to her face. The wheezing weakened. Nyala didn't let go of the inhaler, closely monitoring the woman's condition. A minute later, Amara opened her eyes and looked at her. "Thank you," she said in a raspy voice. There was absolute silence in the hall. The guests watched what was happening like a scene in a theater. No one said a word. Someone lowered their phone, ashamed of having recorded it. Someone turned away, unable to look the young woman in the eye who, an hour earlier, had been publicly humiliated. A silent feeling of guilt floated in the air. Sterling Thorne was kneeling beside his wife. His face was wet with sweat, his hands shaking, his expensive suit wrinkled, his tie crooked. He looked at Nyala, and in his eyes one could read a mixture of shock, relief, and something else, something he himself didn't yet understand. Shame. A delayed realization that he had almost lost the most important person in his life, and she had been saved by the very person he had humiliated. Finally he spoke, and his voice was hoarse, broken. "I ask for your forgiveness. Nyala slowly rose from her knees. She wiped her hands on her skirt. She looked at him. "For what, exactly?" she asked quietly, but everyone in the room heard her words. Sterling understood that all the guests were watching him, the same guests before whom he had humiliated this young woman an hour ago. The witnesses of his cruelty had now become witnesses of his repentance. "For everything," he said with effort, and for the first time there was no authority in his voice. "For everything I said. It was wrong, unjust." Nyala nodded. She didn't smile, didn't demonstrate forgiveness. She simply nodded with restraint, with the dignity that neither poverty nor humiliation could take away from her. She returned the inhaler to the woman who had brought it, thanking her quietly. "The ambulance is coming," one of the guests said, putting his phone back in his pocket. Nyala looked at Amara, who was sitting on a chair leaning against her husband. "Sit quietly, breathe regularly," she said in the professional tone she had become accustomed to over years of work. "Try not to panic. The paramedics will be here in 10 minutes. They'll examine you, and if necessary, take you in." Amara nodded. Her eyes were full of tears, not of pain, but of relief and gratitude. She reached out, touching Nyala's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved my life." Nyala nodded, turned around, and walked toward the exit of the hall. The crowd parted before her in silence, like for a queen. Some guests looked with respect, some with shame for not intervening, for remaining silent when this young woman was humiliated. Someone quietly said, "Bravo." Someone started to applaud, but Nyala didn't turn around. She didn't need their applause. She simply did what she had to do, what she had been taught, what was her calling. She went out into the corridor, leaned her back against the cold wall, and closed her eyes. The adrenaline began to recede, leaving behind emptiness and fatigue. Her knees buckled, her temples throbbed, but she had done it. She saved a life. Despite everything, despite the humiliation, the pain, the fear of losing her job, and that night changed everything. Although Nyala didn't yet know exactly how. The next morning, Nyala woke up to the sound of her alarm clock, and for a few seconds couldn't understand where she was. Her head buzzed from lack of sleep. Yesterday she had come home long after midnight, but couldn't sleep. Images of the night were before her eyes. The broken glasses, Sterling Thorne's furious face, Amara choking, the frightened faces of the guests. All this repeated in her head over and over again, not letting her sleep until dawn. Then memory returned. A small 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city, a narrow bed with a sagging mattress. Through the thin wall, a neighbor's child was crying, a normal morning of a normal life. Nyala stretched, feeling her muscles ache after yesterday's shift. She got up, put on a worn robe, and walked barefoot to the small kitchen. She turned on the kettle, took the remains of bread and cheap cheese out of the refrigerator. Breakfast was meager, but there was no other option. While the water was boiling, she washed her face with cold water. There had been no hot water in the tap for a week. The management company promised to fix it, but nothing happened. Nyala had gotten used to the cold water, to the eternal promises, to having to settle for little. She made strong tea, poured boiling water over instant oatmeal, and went into the next room. Mom was lying on the couch, covered with a warm blanket Nyala had bought last month at a clearance sale. Her face was pale, almost transparent, her breathing heavy and irregular. The illness was progressing, and Nyala knew that without the necessary treatment, without expensive medicine and procedures, there was less and less time left. But where to get the money? A waitress's salary barely covered the utilities, food, and the most necessary pills. "Good morning, Mama," she said softly, sitting on the edge of the couch and taking her mother's hand. The hand was thin, cold. "Good morning, baby." Mom opened her eyes and smiled weakly. Once she had been a beautiful woman, full of strength and energy. Now only memories remained of that woman. "How was work yesterday?" Nyala didn't want to tell her what happened. Mom worried enough about her already. She blamed herself that her daughter had to work 2 jobs to feed the family. She didn't need to know about the humiliation. "Fine, just a normal banquet," she lied, trying to make her voice sound carefree. Lots of guests, nice decorations, nothing special. Mom looked at her closely. A mother's heart always senses a lie. Nyala, are you hiding something? I see it in your eyes. I'm just tired, Mama. Nyala stroked her hand. The shift was long. Now let me give you your meds. You eat, take them, and rest. In the adjacent bed, Zadie stirred in her teddy bear pajamas, disheveled and with a sleepy face. The girl was thin, with big brown eyes and twists that Nyala did for her every morning before school. 10 years old, but she looked 8. Poor nutrition was taking its toll, but her eyes were alive, intelligent, curious. She dreamed of being a doctor. She often said, "When I grow up, I'll cure people like you, Nyala." Nyala, you're home? She threw herself at her big sister and hugged her. I thought you already left for work. It's still early, Z. Nyala kissed her hair, inhaling the scent of baby shampoo. These hugs gave her the strength to keep living. Go eat breakfast. I made oatmeal. And don't forget to brush your teeth before school. Zadie ran to the kitchen, humming some song. Nyala checked her mom's meds, served the oatmeal, helped her take the pills, and poured her tea with honey. Then she got her little sister ready for school, checked her backpack, gave her lunch money, very little, but she couldn't spare more. She walked her to the bus stop, waited for the bus, and only then headed to work. Walking to work, she thought about last night. About Sterling Thorne and his cruelty, about his wife Amara who almost died, about how easy it was to lose a person in minutes, and that her medical skills hadn't disappeared, even though she no longer worked at the hospital. Hands remember, the head remembers, the heart doesn't forget. They can take your job, but they can't take your calling. When she entered the hotel locker room, Ms. Hattie greeted her with a strange look, a mixture of surprise and a certain respect. Vance, the director is calling for you, she said, not with her usual commanding tone, but softer. Go up to the 3rd floor right now. Nyala's heart sank. She was going to be fired. Had Sterling Thorne kept his promise to ruin her life for good? What would she tell Mom? How would she feed the family? She went up to the 3rd floor, trying to breathe regularly, chasing away the panic. She knocked on the director's office door and heard, "Come in." Director Mr. Langston was sitting behind a massive dark wood desk. Before him lay a folder with documents. He was a man of about 60, always serious and sparing with words, wearing glasses and a strict suit. During her time working at the restaurant, Nyala had seen him only a few times. Usually, he only communicated with senior staff. Sit down, Ms. Vance. He nodded at the chair in front of the desk. Nyala sat down, preparing for the worst. An incident occurred last night, the director began, taking off his glasses. I was informed in detail. I understand, Nyala said quietly, lowering her eyes. I am willing to resign voluntarily. Just please give me time to find a new job. I need... Resign? The director raised his eyebrows and looked at her with genuine surprise. Where did you get that idea? I called you in to thank you. You saved a guest's life. That is an exceptional act, an honor for all of us. Nyala sat in silence, not believing what she was hearing. Had she heard wrong? Furthermore, Langston continued, putting his glasses back on and opening the folder, Sterling Thorne called me personally this morning, early at 7 a.m. He wants to meet with you. He asked me to give you the address of his office and the time, today at 2 p.m. He said it is very important. He held out a business card. Nyala took it, examining the elegant typography and gold embossing. Sterling Thorne, CEO, Thorne Investment Group. I don't understand, she said slowly, turning the card over in her hands. Why does he want to meet with me? He didn't say. I don't know the details. The director shrugged. But I can guess. Thorne is an influential man, tough in business, but fair, they say. If he wants to thank you, accept it. You deserve it. And don't be afraid. Just meet with him and listen. Nyala left the office in total bewilderment. All day until the meeting, she tried to understand what to expect. Maybe he just wants to give her money as a token of gratitude, or really apologize again to soothe his conscience. Or maybe it's a trap and he wants to make sure she doesn't go complain somewhere about his behavior. At 1:30 p.m., she excused herself from work. She changed into a simple black dress bought a year ago when she was still working at the clinic. She looked in the mirror, pale, scared, nothing like a person going to meet a millionaire. But there was no choice. She went to the address indicated by bus. There was no money for a taxi. Sterling Thorne's office was downtown, in a modern glass building that towered over the old structures like a symbol of a new era. Nyala entered, saw marble floors, leather sofas in the lobby, security guards. Everything here screamed money and power. She took the elevator to the 20th floor, where a secretary greeted her, an elegant middle-aged woman in an expensive suit and flawless makeup. "Nyala Vance?" she verified with a professional smile. "Go on in, they are expecting you. The office at the end of the hall." Nyala walked down the long corridor, feeling her palms sweat. She knocked on the door. "Come in." She heard the familiar voice. The office was huge, expensive furniture, strict, chosen with taste. On the walls hung paintings, not reproductions, but authentic canvases. Sterling was sitting behind the desk in a light shirt, no jacket, sleeves rolled up. When Nyala entered, he stood up and came out from behind the desk. Today, he looked different than yesterday. In his eyes, there was none of that cold arrogance. "Thank you for coming," he said, and his voice was completely different. Calm, without aggression, almost soft. "Please, sit down. Coffee? Tea?" "No, thank you." Nyala sat in the armchair across from him, holding her purse on her knees. She felt out of place. This world of expensive suits, offices with city views, and power was alien and hostile to her. Sterling sat opposite, not behind the desk, but in the armchair next to her, as if he wanted to remove the barrier, make the conversation more personal. "I invited you because I want to apologize one more time," he began, looking her directly in the eyes. "What I said yesterday was unacceptable, cruel, unjust. I was wrong, and I recognize that completely. No excuses." "You already apologized yesterday," Nyala replied quietly. "In front of everyone. It's enough." "No, it's not enough," he objected firmly. "I humiliated you publicly before dozens of people. I insulted you. I threatened you. And I want to make up for this, not just with words. I am a man of action." Nyala tensed up. "If this is about money, it's not necessary," she said quickly. "I only did what I had to do. I'm a nurse. Or rather, I was a nurse. It's my duty to help people. I don't expect a reward." Sterling became alert, catching something in her words. "Was? What do you mean?" Nyala fell silent. She didn't want to tell a stranger her story. She didn't want to remember the pain and humiliation. But something in his look, sincere, attentive, made her speak. 3 months ago, I was working in the ER at County General. She began slowly, choosing her words. "I loved my job. I was a good specialist. Patients were grateful. Doctors praised me. I dreamed of growing professionally. But then I was fired." "For what reason?" Sterling asked, leaning forward. Nyala clasped her hands. Even now, 3 months later, talking about this hurt. "The chief of medicine, Dr. Lucius Graves, started pressuring me." She paused, gathering her courage. "He wanted me to be with him, not as a colleague, in a different way. He invited me to his office under various pretexts, gave compliments, touched me. I refused. I said it was unacceptable. And after that, he did everything to destroy my career." Sterling listened in silence, not interrupting, and Nyala saw him clench his jaw in rage. "He organized an unscheduled inspection," Nyala continued, and the words were flowing on their own now. "He planted fake violations in the documents. He wrote a performance review accusing me of serious errors I hadn't committed. He fired me for gross misconduct, something that is almost never done to nurses. And then," her voice trembled, "then he called all the head doctors of other clinics in the city and told lies about me, that I was incompetent, that I endangered patients, that I had problems with alcohol. It's all a lie. But who will verify? The word of a chief of medicine against the word of a fired nurse. When she finished, silence hung in the office. Sterling stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. His back was tense, fists clenched. "That man," he said slowly, without turning around, "destroyed your career out of revenge, simply because you rejected him." "Yes," Nyala replied quietly, "and no one intervened. No one helped. Not colleagues, not lawyers. Who could I complain to?" Nyala smiled bitterly. "He has connections, money, influence in medical circles. And I am nobody. A simple nurse without connections and without money for lawyers." Sterling turned to her, and Nyala saw fury in his eyes, not toward her, but toward the situation, toward Graves, toward the system that allows such people to destroy other people's destinies with impunity. "And now, how are you living?" Nyala lowered her eyes. "The city is small in that industry. Everyone knows everyone. No one wants to deal with a nurse about whom the chief of medicine says such things. I sent resumes to 20 places, rejections everywhere. They won't even hire me as a janitor. That's why I went to work as a waitress. It's the only thing I have." She raised her gaze. "And I need to feed my family, my mom, and my little sister. Mom is sick. She needs expensive meds I can barely afford. My sister is 10. She goes to school. I feed them alone." Sterling returned to the armchair and sat down. "You must return to medicine," he said firmly. "You have talent, skills, a calling. Yesterday you saved my wife's life when everyone else, including me, was simply standing there not knowing what to do. You shouldn't be serving trays. It is wrong." "It's easy to say." Nyala shook her head. "But how? No one will hire me. Graves makes sure of that." Sterling leaned forward. His look became hard and determined. "I will help you. Not out of gratitude, out of justice. What they did to you is inadmissible, criminal, and this Graves must answer for his actions." "According to the law, how will you help?" Nyala asked suspiciously. "You don't understand him." "I have a friend." Sterling pulled out his phone. "Jabari Reed, detective, head of the Major Crimes Corruption Task Force. He specializes in white-collar crime, corruption, abuse of power. If what you told me is true, and I believe you, then Graves can be prosecuted criminally. For abuse of power, defamation, possibly even sexual coercion." Nyala froze. Hearing these words aloud was terrifying. "I don't want revenge," she whispered. "I just want to go back to work. I want to heal people. Help. That's all I dream of." "This isn't revenge," Sterling said firmly. "It's justice. Big difference. If Graves did this to you, he did it to others, and he will keep doing it until he is stopped. How many more nurses will he fire? How many more lives will he break? You can stop this." He dialed a number and put the phone to his ear. Nyala sat feeling her heart beating frantically. "Jabari, it's Sterling. I need your help. Yes, urgent. I have a young woman here who was the victim of official misconduct. Can you meet with us? Today?" "Yes. In my office, in half an hour." "Excellent. Thanks." He finished the conversation and looked at Nyala. "Jabari will be here in half an hour. You will tell him everything in detail. He will evaluate the situation and say what can be done legally." "I'm scared," admitted Nyala, her voice trembling. "Graves is an influential person in the city. If nothing works out, he'll make my life even worse. He'll destroy me for good." "It will only result in no case if you do nothing," Sterling said gently. "But if you are afraid, I understand. The decision is yours. No one will force you. It must be your choice." Nyala sat in silence, reflecting on his words. She really was afraid. Afraid that everything would get worse, afraid of Graves's revenge, afraid that they would make her out to be a liar and hysterical. But on the other hand, could it be worse than now? She worked a job she didn't love for pennies. She couldn't pay for normal treatment for her mother, couldn't give her sister everything she needed. And Graves was still sitting in his chief of medicine chair, still humiliating other women, still going unpunished. And then she remembered Zadie, her little sister, who dreamed of being a doctor. What did she say? "I want to cure people, Nyala." What example was she giving her? That you have to shut up and endure? That the strong always win and the weak can only bow their heads? No, she couldn't do that. "I'll do it," she said quietly but firmly. "I'll tell everything." Sterling nodded with respect. "Good. Then let's begin the preparation." Half an hour later, Detective Jabari Reed entered the office, a fit man of about 45, with a short haircut and an attentive, studying gaze. He wore a dark suit, moving with confidence. In his appearance, years of service in law enforcement were readable. He shook Sterling's hand, then turned to Nyala and extended his hand. "Jabari Reed, Internal Affairs and Major Crimes," he introduced himself, with a slight smile. "Sterling told me the broad strokes over the phone, but I need to hear it all from you personally. Every detail you can tell." Nyala nodded. Sterling brought her a glass of water, and she thanked him, taking a few sips, gathering her thoughts. "Where do I start?" she asked unsurely. "From the beginning," said Jabari, taking out a notebook and pen. "When did you start working at the clinic? When did the problems start? How did events develop? Don't rush, speak in detail." Nyala began her story again, this time with more detail, remembering dates, names, specific words, and situations. How Graves called her to the office for the first time under the pretext of discussing schedules. How he started keeping her after shifts, offering to drive her home. How he gave ambiguous compliments. How once he touched her shoulder, then her waist. How she politely rejected him every time, tried to keep distance. And then he proposed directly. He said he could help her with her career, with a promotion, with salary, that she was a young woman with prospects, and that he could become her protector. Nyala refused clearly and sharply. She said it was unacceptable, that she considered him only as a boss, asked him to leave her alone. And the next day it began. A sudden inspection, a commission from the regional health department. Graves organized it himself. Later, Nyala found out from a colleague. Violations were found in the documents, supposedly patient charts filled out incorrectly, supposedly missing signatures, violations of sanitary norms. It was all staged. Old documents inserted, records altered. Jabari took notes, sometimes asking clarifying questions. Exact dates, witnesses, documents. "Do you keep copies of the termination documents? Graves' performance review?" he asked. "Yes, everything is saved," Nyala nodded. "I can bring it." "Excellent. And witnesses. Did any of the colleagues see how he harassed you? Did anyone hear conversations?" Nyala reflected. "My colleague Shanice walked into the office when he was holding my hand. She saw. Another nurse, Imara King, told me that Graves had harassed her too. She was fired 6 months ago, also for misconduct. She can confirm." Jabari wrote down the names. "This is good. We need testimonies from other women. If he did this systematically, this will strengthen the prosecution." He looked up. "Listen, if Graves really did what you described, this falls under several felonies: abuse of power, defamation, sexual coercion, possibly even extortion." Nyala listened, and these legal formulations made her nervous. All this sounded serious, terrifying, real. "But to initiate criminal proceedings, we need evidence," Jabari continued. "One person's testimony isn't enough. We need other witnesses or recordings of conversations or documentary confirmations. Otherwise, the case will fall apart in court." "How do we get them?" Nyala asked, feeling hope fade. "The documents are destroyed or falsified. The colleagues are afraid to talk. Everyone knows Graves is vindictive." Jabari and Sterling looked at each other. A silent understanding passed between them. "There is a way," Jabari said slowly, "but it requires courage on your part, and the ability to act, and readiness to take a risk." "What way?" Nyala tensed. You will file a formal complaint about the pressure from Graves, Jabari explained, leaning forward. An official report to the police. This will give us a legal basis to conduct operative investigation activities. We will give you a special recording device, a miniature wire certified for use in operations, and you will call Graves. Nyala turned pale. Call him? What for? You'll say you're tired of fighting, that you can't find work, that you need money for your mother's treatment, that you are willing to accept his conditions. Jabari spoke evenly, without emotion, like a doctor explaining a complex operation. Only that in exchange, you ask for help returning to medicine. You'll say you accept his proposal if he restores your reputation. But this is a trap, Nyala whispered. It is a legal sting operation, Jabari corrected. It would be entrapment if we pushed him to a crime he wasn't going to commit. But he already committed the crime, repeatedly. We are simply documenting his actions. He will almost certainly want to meet. He'll set a place and time. And in that meeting, he will reveal himself. People like him are arrogant. He will speak openly because he'll think he won. That you surrendered. It will be fishing with live bait. And if he suspects something, we will be close, Jabari assured. You won't be alone for a second. Our team will conduct surveillance. We'll have visual contact, audio control. As soon as we get enough evidence on the recording, we will move in and arrest him in the act. Is it dangerous? Nyala asked quietly, squeezing the armrests of the chair. There is always risk, Jabari replied honestly, but minimal. The meeting will be in a public place under our control. He won't have time to do anything. But the decision must be yours. We cannot force you. It is your right. Nyala sat in silence. Her heart pounded loudly. Thoughts boiled in her head. It was a chance, perhaps the only one. But it was scary. To meet with the man who destroyed her life, to pretend she had given up, to play the role of a broken woman. She looked at Sterling. He sat silently, not interfering, but his look said, I will support whatever decision you make. Nyala closed her eyes. She remembered Mom on the couch, pale and sick. She remembered Zadie with her naive dream of being a doctor. She remembered herself 3 months ago, confident, happy, loving her job. And she remembered Amara King, whom Graves also fired, and Shanice, who was afraid to talk. And all those women he would still hurt if he wasn't stopped. She opened her eyes. I'll do it, she said firmly. Tell me what I have to do. Jabari nodded with respect. Good. Then let's start the preparation. He opened the notebook to a new page. First, you will write a detailed statement indicating all the facts. I will help formulate it correctly. Second, we will hold a briefing. We will teach you how to behave, what to say, how to react to his words. Third, we will check the technical equipment. The recording must be clear, without interference. When will this be? Nyala asked. We do the statement today, the briefing tomorrow, the call to Graves the day after tomorrow, when everything is ready. We don't need to rush. Everything must be thought out to the last detail. They spent the next 2 hours drafting the complaint. Nyala recalled every detail, every conversation with Graves, every episode of pressure. Jabari took notes, formulated legally competently, asked questions. Sterling sat nearby, supporting in silence. When the complaint was ready, Nyala signed it with a trembling hand. Her signature on an official document made everything happening irreversible. There was no turning back. Now we have grounds for operative activities, Jabari said, putting the document in a folder. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., come to this address. He wrote the address on a card. It's our precinct. We'll conduct a detailed briefing, give you the equipment. We'll rehearse all possible conversation scenarios. Nyala took the card. She nodded. What do I say at work? Nothing special, Jabari replied. Behave as usual. Not a word to anyone about our plans, not even to close ones. The fewer people know, the better. Information must not leak to Graves. They ended the meeting. Jabari left first, promising to prepare everything necessary. Nyala was left alone with Sterling. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for believing, for helping." "Don't thank me," Sterling shook his head. "I am the one who must thank you for saving Amara and for teaching me an important lesson." "Which one?" Nyala was surprised. "That you cannot judge people by their position," he replied. "Yesterday I looked at you and only saw a waitress. I saw the uniform, not the person. I didn't think you have your own story, your difficulties, your dreams. I simply humiliated you and moved on." He paused. "You know, all my life I built businesses. I got used to being tough, demanding. I got used to people fearing me. I thought that's how it should be, that strength is when they fear you. And yesterday I understood that true strength is when you help the weakest, when you recognize your mistakes, when you are not afraid to show vulnerability." Nyala listened to him and felt lighter. This man, so influential and powerful, turned out to be capable of change. "I'll walk you out," Sterling said, standing up. "And also, I have a proposal. Amara would like to meet with you, thank you personally. Maybe tomorrow night, come to dinner at our house." "I don't know." Nyala was bewildered. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding," Sterling smiled. "You are the person to whom my wife owes her life. She wants to get to know you better, and so do I. Come, Amara cooks wonderfully." Nyala thought and nodded. "Okay, thank you." Sterling walked her to the elevator. He shook her hand in farewell. "Hang in there, Nyala. Everything will work out. I believe in it." Nyala left the building and walked to the bus stop. It was getting dark. The city was turning on its lights. Somewhere out there in his office, Dr. Lucius Graves sat, sure of his impunity. And Nyala went home with a heavy but determined heart. Ahead were terrifying days, but she was ready. For herself, for Mom and Zadie, for all those women Graves had offended and would still offend. The next morning, Nyala woke up with a heavy feeling in her chest. All night she had nightmares. Graves, his cold stare, his threats. She woke up in a cold sweat several times, but went back to sleep only to see the same dream. When the alarm rang, she felt shattered, but the determination didn't disappear. On the contrary, the fear only strengthened her intention to see the matter through to the end. She fed her family breakfast, got Zadie ready for school, gave Mom her meds, and went to the address Detective Reed had given her. The police precinct building was gray, discreet in an old neighborhood of the city. Nyala went through security, showing her ID to the officer, and went up to the third floor. Jabari met her in the hallway, took her to a small conference room. There sat 3 men in plain clothes, operatives from his unit. "Nyala, meet the team," Jabari said. "This is Marcus, Tyrell, and Chris. They will ensure your cover during the meeting with Graves. Experienced people. They've worked with me for many years." The men nodded, said hello. They were all about 35 to 40 years old with serious professional faces. "Sit down." Jabari pointed to a chair. "Let's start the briefing. We have a lot of work." The next 3 hours were like preparation for a performance. Jabari explained how to maintain the conversation with Graves, what phrases to use, how to react to his words. They wrote down possible dialogue scenarios, rehearsed answers. "The main thing is to lead him to candor," Jabari said, pacing the room. "Let him say himself what he did, how he fired you, how he ruined your reputation, about his conditions. The more he talks, the better for the case." "And if he suspects a trap?" Nyala asked. "He won't suspect," Marcus replied confidently. "These people are arrogant. He'll think you broke, that desperation forced you to surrender. For him, it will be a victory, and winners don't think about danger." Then Jabari took out a small device, a recorder the size of a quarter. He showed how to turn it on, where to fix it. "This is certified equipment," he explained. "The recording will serve as evidence in court. Sound quality is excellent. Range of 50 feet. We'll fix it under your clothes. No one will notice." They rehearsed technical details, checked communication. Niala put on a miniature earpiece, hiding it with her loose hair. Through it, Jabari could give her instructions during the conversation if something went wrong. Now, the most important thing. Jabari sat in front of Niala, looked her in the eyes. The call. You will call Graves today at 6 p.m. At that time, he usually finishes his rounds. He'll be in the office alone. Speak calmly, a little tired, with notes of desperation. Don't push for pity, but imply that you are in a hopeless situation. Say you are ready to talk about his proposal. Niala nodded, noting the main points. And if he refuses to meet? He won't refuse, Tyrell smiled. Guys like him need self-affirmation. He'll want to see you come crawling to him. It's his style. The day dragged on painfully. Niala returned home. She tried to behave as usual, but Mom noticed something was wrong anyway. Baby, you're tense, she said during the meal. Did something happen? No, Mama. Niala stroked her hand. Just thinking a lot about work. Everything is fine. Don't worry. At 5 p.m., she went out to the street, went to a quiet park near the house, took out her phone, looked at Graves' number, which she had written down 3 months ago when she worked at the clinic. Her hands were shaking. She called Jabari. I'm ready, she said. Excellent, he replied. We are on the line. Recording activated. Go ahead. Niala took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a few seconds, gathering courage. Then she dialed Graves' number. Long rings. 3, 4, 5. Niala thought he wouldn't answer, but on the 7th ring, she heard the familiar voice. Speak. The voice was indifferent, a little irritated. He didn't know who was calling. Niala's number wasn't saved in his contacts. Dr. Graves. Niala forced her voice to sound low and unsure. It's Niala Vance. Pause. She could hear him breathing on the phone. Then he chuckled. Vance, wow, didn't expect to hear from you. What happened? Decided to apologize for your rudeness? Niala clenched her fist, containing the rage. Even now he was trying to humiliate her. Dr. Graves, I wanted to talk to you. She spoke slowly, making pauses as if it cost her to choose words. About that proposal you made me. Back then, before the firing. New pause. But now there was interest in it. Well, well, he drawled. So you decided to be a good girl. What changed? I can't find work. Niala allowed her voice to tremble. It's been 3 months. No one hires me. Everywhere they say that, with my record, that the path to medicine is closed for me. And I need money. Mom needs treatment. My little sister is small. I work as a waitress, but it's not enough. There you have it. In Graves' voice appeared satisfied mockery. And I warned you. I said that without me, you wouldn't go anywhere. But back then, you were too proud, right? Niala stayed silent, letting him talk, letting him reveal himself. And now what? He continued. The pride evaporated? You decided it's better to accept my conditions than to starve? I am willing to talk, Niala said quietly. If you help me return to medicine, fix the performance review, help get a job, I don't ask for much. Just give me a chance to work. Graves laughed, a short, triumphant laugh of a winner. Well, sure I can help, it's no problem. 1 word, and you'll get hired at any clinic in the city. I can even bring you back to our clinic if you want. Everything is in my hands. And what do you want in exchange? Niala asked quietly. Graves smirked through the phone. You're a smart girl. You understand yourself what I want. I made you a proposal 3 months ago. You refused, rudely refused. By the way, what changed since then? I understood I have no choice. Niala pronounced the words she had rehearsed, that without your help, I won't make it. Correct, you understood. Graves nodded. There you go. You wasted 3 months of life in vain. You could have accepted right away. You'd be working, getting a salary, and so on. Waitress. He laughed with contempt. I saw you at the Galaxy Hotel restaurant, at that banquet, carrying trays. Ridiculous, right? An educated nurse carrying trays. Niala gritted her teeth, holding back the anger. He enjoyed her humiliation. So will you help? She asked. Of course I'll help. Graves leaned back in his chair, though she couldn't see him. But first, let's talk about the conditions. I'm not running a charity, understand? I understand. Nyala forced herself to look straight ahead. So, he spoke businesslike, as if discussing a contract. I will fix the review. I'll make it positive. I'll call the chief of medicine at City Hospital number 3. There's just an opening for a nurse in the therapy department. I'll get you the job there. The salary isn't bad. The schedule is comfortable. You start working in a week, and in exchange... Nyala nodded, her heart pounding. In exchange, you will be, let's say, grateful. He smiled. Grateful. We will meet once a week. I have an apartment on the outskirts. Quiet, no one knows. You will come when I say. And no nonsense, no refusals. Understood? Nyala nodded, feeling her insides tighten with revulsion. But she said, yes. And if later I don't accept? Graves laughed. Then everything will go back to how it was. I'll ruin your reputation again, worse than now. I'll tell everyone that you came on to me yourself and then tried to blackmail me. Who will they believe? Me, a chief of medicine with 20 years of experience? Or you, a nurse fired for misconduct? His voice became hard. So think. Either you accept and work, or you stay being nobody. The choice is yours. Nyala was silent, imagining him. There was the real Dr. Lucius Graves. No masks, no pretense. A predator sure of his impunity. And you know, he continued, satisfied with how the conversation was developing, you aren't the first. Before you, there were others. Imara, for example. Remember her? Also proud at first. Then she accepted. 6 months everything was fine until she bored me and I fired her. And now a new girl works at reception, Tia. Nice, obedient. Nyala listened, and every word of his was being recorded. Every confession, every threat. He was digging his own grave without even suspecting it. So decide fast. Graves checked his watch. I have little time. Yes or no? I need to see you, Nyala said. To discuss details. I can't do this over the phone. Smart, Graves agreed. Okay, let's meet. In an hour. At the Blackwood Cafe on 5th Street. It's quiet there. Don't be late. I'll be there, Nyala said, and hung up. She exhaled, feeling her knees shaking. Jabari's voice sounded in her earpiece. Good job, Nyala. We have the confession on the threat and the extortion, but the meeting is crucial. He needs to confirm the sexual quid pro quo in person. We are moving to the location. Marcus and Chris will be inside. Tyrell and I in the van outside. You can do this. An hour later, Nyala entered the Blackwood Cafe. It was a dimly lit place with high booths. She saw Graves immediately. He was sitting in the far corner sipping coffee. He looked confident, relaxed. Nyala approached the table. Graves looked her up and down, smiling. Sit down, he pointed to the sofa opposite. You look nervous. Relax. We're partners now. Nyala sat down. The recorder was taped to her chest under her blouse. The wire was hot against her skin. Did you bring the documents? She asked. Impatient. Graves chuckled. I told you. First the agreement, then the actions. But don't worry, I keep my word. He reached across the table and tried to take her hand. Nyala instinctively pulled back. Don't be shy. His voice dropped to a whisper. If you want the job, you have to be nice to me. Remember? Once a week, starting tonight. Tonight? Nyala asked loudly enough for the mic. Yes, after we finish here, we go to my place. You show me how grateful you are, and tomorrow morning I call City Hospital 3. Deal? And if I say no to going to your apartment, then the deal is off, and I make sure you never work in healthcare in this state again. Is that a threat? It's a promise, baby girl. That was it, the confirmation. I accept, Nyala said, but looked past him toward the entrance. At that moment, the door of the cafe burst open. Jabari Reed and 2 operatives entered. Hard, determined faces. Graves turned, saw them, and turned pale. What? What is happening here? he stammered, standing up. Jabari approached the table, pulled out his badge. Dr. Lucius Graves, he pronounced with an official tone. You are detained under suspicion of committing felonies, extortion, sexual coercion, and official misconduct. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Graves stood opening his mouth, unable to utter a word. His face turned from pale to red, then blotchy. He looked at Nyala, and shock read in his eyes. You set me up, he exhaled. Nyala stood up, straightening her back. She looked at him calmly, without rage, without triumph. She simply looked at him. No, she said quietly. You set yourself up 3 months ago. And today. And all these years when you humiliated women thinking everything would be permitted to you. Marcus and Chris approached Graves, spun him around, put handcuffs on him. He didn't resist, still in a state of shock. This is a mistake, he shouted suddenly. I didn't do anything. She came herself. She proposed it herself. It's entrapment. We have an audio recording of your conversation, Jabari replied calmly. And a recording of the phone conversation where you yourself confirmed that you made her a proposal that ruined her reputation, that you can fix everything for a certain payment. Everything is recorded. Everything will be added to the case. They took Graves out of the cafe. Nyala stood holding on to the back of the chair, feeling her legs buckle. Jabari approached her, put a hand on her shoulder. You did it, he said with respect. Excellent work. Now everything is in the hands of the investigation and the court. What happens now? Nyala asked. Now they'll take him to the precinct. They'll process the arrest. Tomorrow interrogations, forensics on the recordings. We'll gather testimonies from other victims. Imara King, Shanice. We'll verify documents at the clinic. It will take time, but the case won't stop now. Nyala nodded. She felt emptiness, but also relief. The work was done. The next 2 months passed like a day. The investigation worked quickly and thoroughly. Detective Reed kept Nyala informed, calling regularly and telling about the progress. The first discovery was the testimony of Imara King. The woman came to the police the day after Graves' arrest, having heard what happened on the news. She told her story, similar to Nyala's: harassment, pressure, threats of firing. When she refused, she was fired with an invented pretext, ruining her record. Imara cried during the interrogation, saying she was afraid to go to the police. She thought they wouldn't believe her. Then came Shanice. She still worked at the clinic and testified about how she saw Graves harassing Nyala. She confirmed that he called nurses to the office under various pretexts, that many girls were afraid to be alone with him. Another witness appeared, Tia from the reception, whom Graves mentioned in the conversation. The young woman admitted she tolerated his harassment for 6 months, fearing losing her job. Now, when he was arrested, she gathered the courage to tell the truth. Each new witness strengthened the prosecution. The district attorney's office conducted a verification of the clinic's documentation and discovered many violations: falsification of records, fake inspection reports, financial maneuvers. Graves not only harassed women but also stole from the clinic's budget. The case grew like a snowball. A month after the arrest, the court determined the precautionary measure for Graves: remand in custody. His lawyers tried to get house arrest, but the prosecutor insisted on isolation, citing the risk of pressure on witnesses. Nyala gave testimony several times before the investigator. Each time it was difficult to remember, tell, relive again. But she stood firm, and Sterling and Imara became true friends for Nyala. After that night in the cafe when they arrested Graves, Nyala still went to dinner at their house. Imara welcomed her warmly, hugged her, thanked her for the saved life. They talked long about everything: about life, about difficulties, about dreams. Imara turned out to be completely different from how she seemed at that banquet. A simple, open, kind woman. She told Nyala she had been involved in charity for a long time, helping orphanages and shelters. She proposed help to Nyala, but not with money like a handout, but with work. "We have a charitable foundation," Imara said. "We organize free medical exams for children from low-income families. We need nurses, doctors. Could you help?" While the investigation goes on, while you don't officially return to the clinic, it's volunteering, but we compensate expenses." Nyala accepted, and for the first time in 3 months, she put on the white scrubs again. Again, she did what she loved: helped children, cured, cared. Every day brought satisfaction and meaning. Sterling helped with Mom's treatment. He paid for expensive medications, organized a consultation with the best specialists. Mom began to feel better. Strength appeared, her face color improved. Nyala cried with happiness when Mom, for the first time in months, got up from the couch and walked around the apartment alone. They bought Zadie a new school uniform, books, everything necessary. The girl blossomed, became more confident. She continued dreaming of being a doctor, and now Nyala knew her little sister would have that opportunity. And Sterling changed too. Nyala saw it every time they met. He became softer, more attentive to people. He stopped yelling at subordinates, started listening. Once he confessed to Nyala, "You know, that night at the hotel changed a lot in me. I understood I was a horrible person, arrogant, cruel. I thought money and power gave me the right to judge people, and in reality, I was simply a coward covering fears with aggression." "You changed," Nyala said. "That is the main thing, thanks to you," he replied. "You showed what true strength is, not in money nor in power, but in remaining human, even when they humiliate you." The trial against Dr. Lucius Graves began in early autumn. The process was open. In the courtroom, there were many people: journalists, medical workers, simply sympathetic people. Nyala sat in the room next to other victims. Imara held her hand. Both were nervous. Graves sat in the defendant's area, aged, broken. Of his former self-confidence, not a trace remained. Lawyers tried to build a defense, but the evidence was irrefutable. Audio recordings, witness testimonies, documentary confirmations, everything worked against him. The prosecutor read the indictment, and every point sounded like a sentence: abuse of power, sexual coercion, defamation, falsification of official documents, embezzlement of budget funds. Graves tried to justify himself, said he was framed, that everything was consensual, but the judge stopped him, pointing to the recordings where he himself confessed the crimes. Witnesses came out one after another. Imara told her story with tears. Shanice confirmed the facts of harassment. Tia spoke about how she was afraid to refuse, fearing revenge. Nyala also testified. She spoke calmly, to the point, without excessive emotions. She told the facts: how he coerced her, how he threatened, how he destroyed her career. The judge listened attentively, sometimes asking clarifying questions. When she finished, there was silence in the room. Then someone started to applaud. The judge called for order, but it was noticeable that the room was on the side of the victims. The process lasted 3 days. On the 3rd day, the judge retired to deliberate. 2 hours later, he returned with the verdict. The court declared Lucius Graves guilty of committing crimes under the Articles of Abuse of Power, sexual coercion, defamation, and extortion. It determined a penalty in the form of imprisonment for a period of 3 years to be served in a medium-security state prison. It deprived him of the right to hold positions in medical institutions for a period of 3 years after serving the sentence. It demanded compensation for moral damages in favor of the victims. Nyala listened and felt everything tighten inside. 3 years. It seemed little, but it was justice. It was recognition of his guilt. It was the end of his power over them. Graves lowered his head. His lawyers were writing something down, but it was clear that an appeal would change little. The evidence was too overwhelming. When the judge finished, the room stirred. The victims hugged, cried with relief, with joy that justice finally triumphed. Nyala left the courtroom and was surrounded. Sterling, Amara, Jabari. Hugging, congratulating. "You did it," Amara said, hugging her. "You could do it." "We all did it," Nyala replied, looking at Imara, Shanice, Tia, all together. Jabari shook her hand. "Now you are free," he said. "You can all live forward without looking back." And a week later, Nyala was invited to an interview at City Hospital No. 3, the same one Graves promised to get her a job at. Now, the chief of medicine of the hospital, having known about the case, called Nyala himself and invited her to work. "We need such nurses," he said in the interview. "Brave, firm, professional. You proved that you won't break under pressure. That is worth a lot." Nyala accepted the proposal, signed the employment contract, received white scrubs with the embroidered hospital logo. Nyala entered the department, and colleagues greeted her with applause. They knew her story, respected her courage. "Welcome home," said the head nurse, hugging her. And Nyala understood. She really had returned home. Where was her place? Where she was needed. That night she came home where Mom and Zadie were waiting for her. Mom was sitting on the couch, no longer lying down. She felt much better. Zadie was doing homework. "Nyala!" The girl threw herself at her. "Well, how was it? How was the first day?" "Wonderful." Nyala picked her up in her arms, although she was already quite heavy. "Simply wonderful. I am a nurse again." "Hooray!" Zadie shouted. "I told you everything would work out for you." Mom approached, hugged her daughter. "I am proud of you," she whispered. "You are strong. You didn't give up." Nyala hugged them both, feeling her eyes fill with tears. But now they were tears of happiness. A few more months passed. Life normalized. Nyala worked, earned decent money, helped Mom recover. Zadie studied, dreamed of the future. Sterling and Amara remained their friends, often invited her home, helped with advice. Sterling even proposed to Nyala the position of medical coordinator in his charitable foundation, with the possibility of combining it with work at the hospital. Nyala accepted. Now, she not only cured patients but also helped organize medical programs for the needy. Amara King also found work in a private clinic where she was valued and respected. Shanice continued working at the city clinic, but now without fear. Tia resigned from reception and entered nursing school. She decided to become a nurse too. And Graves was serving his sentence in state prison. He was stripped of all awards, excluded from the medical community. His wife filed for divorce. His reputation was destroyed irrevocably. Justice triumphed. She went through humiliation, pain, fear, but she didn't break. She fought and won, not with revenge, but with justice, not with force, but with dignity. Life continued, and now Nyala could be sure of tomorrow. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.